Hello, everyone. Welcome to the channel. Yes, I apologize. We were having a good time in the backstage, just chatting and joking. So,
We're talking about the Great White North.
whoops. But yeah, the Great White North, great show. If anyone doesn't know what that is, you need to go look it up and maybe go down the YouTube, rabbit hole with that.
Look it up, Hoser.
But welcome, Andy. Good to have you back. How you been?
Yeah, hanging in there.
You've been
Uh,
busy.
it turns out writing is time consuming.
Who would have thought? Not just writing, but you've been writing 3 books.
Yeah, well, I mean, you knew that whole story. It was just Essa Hansen. Like I asked her,
Yeah,
hey, what would you, if you could go back and do something different, what would you do? And she said, write them all at once. I was like,
yeah.
okay, so that's what I'll do. And I think it's a good idea because it brings the whole story together and makes sure that all of your arcs are exactly what you want them to be. But holy Moses, that was like 18 months of just type, 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 type.
So are you officially on a writing vacation for a little bit?
Semi. The
Okay.
proof, the final draft of book 2 just went off to the proofreader. That's Izzy. And I'll get that back, and then we've got to format it and get it out to the arc readers, and then I'll dive into book 3 and get that done. But the stress is off, right? Because
Okay.
like when you're
Yeah.
close to the finish line, that's when everything goes bad.
Optimism at its finest.
Mhm. Oh, it's just
Well,
reality. It's just like, because it's like, and it's all that last minute detail stuff. Oh, this
yeah.
word is wrong. Oh, this chapter title is wrong. Oh, this, oh, this, oh, this. Oh, I forgot to include da-da.
And then you publish it and there's still something you missed.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. I think we went through like 3 different versions of the paper book after it was published this time around.
Oh my gosh. That must have been frustrating because you have to wait for it to come around, don't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like Blackjack, I
Yeah.
remember I blew it. Like the paperback was ready to go like 3 months before the book released, and then the
Okay.
book released, and I got it, and I'd been through the whole thing. I was like, it's great. And my wife was like, "Where's the table of contents?" so, so there are like 20 copies of Blackjack out there somewhere that have no table of contents anywhere.
Those are limited edition collector items. That's what they are now.
Serious collector's items.
Yes. We have some fabulous folks here with us in the live chat. We've got Tim. Welcome,
Oh, good.
Tim. John, always good to see you. Daniel, always a pleasure. And Derek, welcome. Always good to see you. So, first things first, because I know who you are. Many of these people know who you are, but let's do a quick introduction and tell us a little bit about the crimes of Rooker Flynn. Oh, hey, and
Hi,
before you
my
go, we
name
got
is
a
A.R.
Brian.
Witham, and if you've read the book, you can call me Andy. And hi, Brian. Uh, I'm Kay's biggest fan. Kay and I have known each other for, I think, like 2.5 years at this point. Been hanging out.
Yeah.
The Legends of Blackjack was my coming of age fantasy novel that got released. I thought I was never going to write another one because, like everything else, I thought that it would be released out into the public and no one would ever read it, and that would be the end of it. Some of you turkeys decided that you wanted to read it and like it, so
I am
I needed
proudly
a
one of
backup.
those turkeys.
Right? I was saying, it just would have been so much easier to have been completely ignored like I expected to. Because, like, you know, it's a book. There's way too much
Right.
competition. Trying to get a book in somebody's hands, it's hard enough getting somebody to watch a television show, right? Much less a
Mm,
book. It's like, okay. And then you get involved in the reading community. And it's like, oh, that stack. It's like,
yeah.
where's that TBR? How do you even begin to insert yourself or beg
You
someone
get
to insert
darts.
you
Just
somewhere in this group? But people took the time and they read it and they liked it. And I thought that was awfully sweet. So I decided to write another one. And The Crimes of Rooker Flynn is the backup. So if The Legend of
mm,
Blackjack is the sweet coming of age story, The Crimes of Rooker Flynn is the flip side to the criminal world of Keymark, where we're introduced to some of the harsh realities of life as you grow a little bit older.
lovely contrast there. The question I always love asking everyone is what do you want your readers to walk away with from reading, let's say, The Crimes of Wicker Flynn in this case, because this is your latest publication?
Oh man,
Trauma?
walking away with a deep and desperate need to read the second book.
Done. Success.
Because with I mean you've read it. With the
Hmm.
first one, you've got expectations going in, and so we break those at the beginning. And
Right.
then we kind of bring you on this, oh, I wasn't expecting to go here kind of adventure. And then we get to act three, and the story goes to a place that you didn't think that it could go,
Hmm.
hopefully. And you're kind of left with this, wait, what? So that should lead you right into book two, which is kind of the way that I'm hoping it works. Because I definitely wanted one of the things about Lord of the Rings that got me was the end of Fellowship, where the Fellowship is broken, right?
Right.
Made me want to dive immediately into Two Towers. And then we got to the end
Mm.
of Two Towers, and I was the guy that thought Frodo was dead, right?
Right.
I thought, okay, Shelob got him. What do we
Yeah.
do now? So, which made me immediately go into the Return of the King.
Right.
So I kind of wanted the same kind of feel for this trilogy, where it's like, wait, what? And give you
Mm.
a reason to go, okay, I want another one.
I love it. I love that it stemmed from your experience there.
Oh yeah, because
So,
cliffhangers, which is the reason why they have to be, one, they had to be done, but two, they had to be released fairly quickly, because you didn't
mm,
want to like make somebody wait 2 years to figure out what, because that's not fair.
you say that, and yet there are readers still waiting for their cliffhanger next book in the series, in many different series,
Yeah.
you know?
It's just, you know, honestly, I feel really good about the other thing too that Essa was right about, was that writing the damn thing all together at the same time and making sure it was done
Mm,
prevents you from stopping, right? Because whatever
right.
kind of creative endeavor you're involved in, there are good days and there are bad days, and there are days when you can do it and there are days when you can't.
Yeah.
And when it's already done, stopping is not an option, right? My job at this point is get the line edit done, get the proofread done, and get it out the door.
Right.
So on my good days, I'm yay, and on my bad days, it doesn't matter because I still got another 2 books, and
Hey,
the story
there you
will be
go.
complete. Nobody is going to be asking, "Hey, when's that coming out?" It's all scheduled.
There you go. I imagine too, it's easier to keep the ball rolling while
Mhm.
you're in it. You can motivate yourself a little bit easier. There's no break in between where you're like, "Oh, I need to get back to it. I don't want to mark it right now. I want to get back into the story," kind of feel.
Right.
But I imagine that comes with a lot of hurdles too, because that's a long period of time to write for. And then do you ever hit walls where you just think, "You know what? I do need a break and I do want time away from this?" Or were you able to just plow through it all and what.
So I have been a professional writer since I was 22. So
Mm,
the very first thing that I got over was writer's block, because
nice.
I have a deadline, and that means that there's going to be a product at the end of this, and my feelings
Mm,
don't matter. Which, and I almost feel like every writer should be given a job right off the bat out of college. It's like, here's $1,000, and you need to turn this in on the 30th, right?
mhm,
Because making sure that your feelings don't matter is really important. Because if all you're doing is writing out of your emotions, that's hobbyist stuff, where it's just like,
right.
okay, I feel like it today, I don't feel like it. If you want to be a
Yeah.
professional about it, you write whether you feel like it or not.
Mm,
And then for the being able to truck your way through it, I was convinced that I was going to go June, August, and October. It was like a 2 month break in between each one. So I was just like just sprinting my way for about 18
yeah.
months. And then I talked to Dr. Philip Chase,
Hmm,
who said, hey, guess what? Nothing magical happens when the third book comes out. Everybody who says they're waiting for the trilogy to be done, they don't show up. Right. Either they're going to read
oh,
it or they're not, but nobody's actually waiting for the third book to show up before they start. At least that was his experience.
okay.
I was
All
like, you know
right.
what? That gives me a license to. And so there was this period right after the first book got done where it's just like, I'm going to breathe for a second. Hang on.
Well earned. So
Well,
you were
and
able to gauge it. You were able to
yeah,
gauge it and do what you needed to do. Yeah.
yeah. Well, and the nice thing too about being on the grind is that when you are so deep into it, all of the details are here, right? And the details get lost the further you get away from it. But
Mm.
the reader is going to read it in 2 days or 3 days or 2 weeks,
Yep.
right? And those details are going to matter to them.
Yeah.
And one of the things I figured out with Blackjack was how smart the readers are, right? They
Yeah.
notice all of the little things. They're not forgetting stuff. And it's like, oh man, okay. So being able to have all of the details in your head throughout and not let those things drop is great.
That yeah, that is a very accurate point because I know for myself as a person, I'm gonna speak purely on my own, I'm sure other people might relate to this. But as a reader versus my daily life, I cannot tell you what I had for breakfast, but I can tell you if there was an inconsistency in a book that I am reading, and I will remember it. It'll live rent free.
Yeah.
And it's so weird that that's an important detail, but when we're looking at stories and you're passionate about them, there's a point where, you know, depending on the kind of reader you are, you're either in it for entertainment and you don't care. You'll plow right through it. You might never notice it if you really love the story,
Mhm.
regardless of any minor plot inconveniences or loopholes. But then there's a type of reader who is very detail oriented and they everything needs to make sense in order for that big payoff to work for them at the end, right?
Yeah.
So it just depends on the kind of reader you are, but it yeah, I could see that as being really tricky to navigate when you're like, well, someone's going to notice. So I need
Oh
to
yeah.
I need to make sure that these are clean
Make it
and
work, make it all tie together, make sure everything, and that's the nice thing about having time. You know, you can be on the grind and be on the grind for it's like 18
mm,
months of writing. You could be on the grind, be on a grind for a long time and wind up with something that's beautiful and polished. And it's like,
mm,
okay, let's play this game. And the other
right.
thing too is that what you're really or what I'm doing is you're writing for at least two, if not three different layers of readers, right? I want
Right.
a 16-year-old to be able to read it for the action and the adventure, and that's it. I want somebody who's 35 to be able to read it and get
Mhm.
more meaning out of that and more symbolism and more emotional depth
Yeah.
out of it. And then you're reading for then you're trying to write for the pros, where it's just like you're punching big.
Yeah. Oh, and that's a fine that's a fine line too. It's a hard thing to balance, trying to get different audiences, different age groups, to enjoy a story, and that's something that I felt you did really well with The Legend of Black Jack because it reminded me of stories like The Never Ending Story, Page Master, those kind of tales where even as an adult, I can enjoy the magical wonder and the awe and the like, "Oh, no," and the pure fantasy adventure while forgetting that I'm an adult and that I live an adult life.
It's kind of like punching outside of your weight class. Like
Yeah.
Never Ending Story is actually a
Yeah.
good example because the meaning and the symbolism in Never Ending Story is heavy stuff, right?
Mhm.
But you can also just watch the movie and there's a luck dragon,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah. Kid is the deeper stuff is gonna go over kids' heads, although I'm pretty sure many of us are still traumatized by, one particular scene in the movie, at least. But
No spoilers. The horse dies.
oh my gosh, flashbacks. But
Vortex, vortex, no!
But and those things will stick, but the overarching theme, those kind of concepts of growing up, like Peter Pan, they might go over our heads and how deep they actually, can delve or dark they can go. It's kinda like jokes in shows and movies, right? Like Shrek. How many kids recognize the adult jokes? Very, very few. Like, if they do, that's a little concerning, but
But the ones who are going to get it weren't going to be shocked by the joke to begin with,
Mm-mm.
right? If you can get the
No.
joke, you deserve to get the joke.
Yes. Yeah. Um, Daniel here says that's a major strength of the Keymark books. They're total all agers. I don't read any of the books as YA.
I
Brilliant.
appreciate that. you know,
Sorry, Tim.
I wasn't right, Tim. Yeah, absolutely. That was the thing about Rooker Flynn was that I I was like, okay, I'm going to do Magic School. I'm going to do, you don't have any control, Hunger Games style positioning and world building, and kind of have the breakout of that lock be the goal. And that's such a YA trope, right?
Mm.
That's, kind of Divergent and Hunger Games and all these things kind of play in that world. And then it's like, okay, what can you do to put the gas on? You wind up with a very, very nasty school.
Yes. Yes, which we're gonna talk about in a second. I just wanna say hello to some lovely folks here. We have Cinna, welcome, and
Oh, it's
we
been
have
sitting forever.
yeah, we have JCM Byrne as well, and you all are just lovely in the chat. You were really sweet with the whole biggest fan thing. Yeah, you guys are awesome. You guys are I'm fans of all of you. You guys are amazing. So, let's talk about the one and only Gerba, who I Dolores. She is just Dolores Umbridge on I don't know if you can put Dolores Umbridge on steroids. Can you? You might have.
No, I don't think so.
But we gotta talk about the rhino in the room. Absolutely.
Gerba Whip Marples. I still love that name, and I've written it like 600 times at this point.
It's catchy.
It was I was working for Quentin Tarantino during Pulp Fiction, and we were screwing around coming up with stupid names. And Gerba Whip Marples was one of the ones that I threw out there that got a laugh.
Right.
And it was just like, okay. And like originally, Gerba Whip Marples was a librarian.
Okay.
Um, and then with the Locke Institute, and I knew I didn't want to use her as a librarian because what you don't want to do in a book is insult librarians because they're kind of in charge of deciding whether or not your book gets handed out.
You just didn't wanna get blacklisted by all the libraries. We got it.
Don't insult the librarians. Uh, and then, so I had, she's been around for like 20 years. And
Wow.
originally the Locke Institute was all male because, they're I talked about this with Josh, and I'm just going to say, so in the environment that the Locke Institute is, which is, let's be honest, basically a prison,
Mhm.
I did not want to deal with rape, and I didn't want to have anything to do
Yeah.
with it, and I didn't want to have to address it. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to solve this problem by making everybody guys. Well, the problem is that didn't solve the problem, number one. And two, it got you to a point where it's like it's a sausage party. It's boring. So without female characters, it didn't work. So I was like, okay, so who's in charge of the Locke Institute? We'll put Gerba in charge. And
Mm.
once she's got in that seat, it was like, okay, this plays because she was the opposite of the environment and she was the opposite of Rooker. That was the most
Yes.
important thing, right? It was
Yeah.
because Rooker is like, I'm going to do whatever I want at any given point in time with no consequences whatsoever.
Oh,
And she's like,
yeah.
rules, there we go.
And she
And
just expects everyone to fall in line, and if they don't, that
we have solutions for that.
yeah, Dolores Umbridge style. A little on steroids.
A little on steroids. The
Yes,
consequences are worse.
dire. Yeah. They're pretty high stakes when you're dealing with Gerba as your headmistress. So, she's she's been around for a long time, in terms of her name anyway. Was her disposition always meant to be like
Always.
that?
Always.
Okay.
She
Interesting.
was always this. She was always
Mm.
prim and proper, and everything needed to be buttoned up, and everything needed to be precise, and all the books needed to be in a line, and this is the way things are done. And if you speak loudly in the library, you, sir, will go to the office. That
Don't
was the
like that.
attitude.
Right.
And then you put her in that chair, it was just like, that works. I mean, she was the
Yeah.
easiest thing in the world to write because she was just like,
Okay.
I know who that is.
So what was that like in contrast to Rooker? Because he's the completed opposite, right? And he was a side character you already had from The Legend of Black Jack. So what was it like delving into that side character and then having him the complete opposite where he's just a rapscallion?
He's a rapscallion. Everybody loves a rogue. to me, all of like all of the Blackjack characters have their own inner life, all the way down. There are 9 of them,
Mm,
and I could write a book about every single one of them. And
brilliant.
so, what I wanted to do was kind of next phase in terms of growth and what happens next and the things that happen in your life. So, you're right, Rooker, because you need things to go darker, and you need to get rid of the sense of nobility, right?
Mm,
The whole high moral standing of dad is
yeah.
gone, right? And now we're dealing with your buddies, and it's kind of like Pinocchio, where it's like, hey, come on, let's go to the island and steal some stuff. And so, yeah, and Rooker's super easy to write because all Rooker is everything you ever actually wanted to say but never did. So
Mm, interesting.
it's like it's insult after insult after insult. Everybody's an idiot, and I am a genius, and I know what I'm doing, and you're an idiot if you don't come along, right?
But he does have his own smarts about him.
Oh
He's
yeah,
got the street smarts, he can survive, and he can play situations to his advantage. So it's not like he's, you know, lacking intelligence-wise, it's just his intelligence is very much focused on, "How the heck do I get out of this situation?"
if Jack is intelligence, Rooker is cunning,
There you
and
go.
that's the difference between the two of them.
Yeah.
You put them together, and you have a whole brain.
You would hope. And Joe, this comment, she reminds me of my mom
Oh
referring
my
to
God,
Gerba
Joe, I'm so
as
sorry for you. You can come. My mom will
Oh,
raise you. Just come over, and we'll do it the right way.
there you go. He also says, "We need to have every fantasy author write in a Gerba with marbles in our book." So, yeah, that would be interesting to get her origin story if she did start off as a librarian and then, you know, shenanigans ensue.
Actually, you get her origin story in book 2.
Oh,
Actually,
okay.
almost right off the bat in book 2.
Okay.
And you start finding out more about who she is, who she was, why she's there.
All right. All right. Well, read to find out. I'm looking forward to for that. And we have Ray in here as well. Welcome. Good to see you.
Ray
And
Lackey. I haven't seen Ray Lackey in forever.
yeah, there
Beard
you
of
go.
Darkness.
Welcome. And we've got Matt from the Beard of Darkness. Look at that. We've got a stellar crowd. You guys are awesome. So, all right. We got to talk about the spiders.
Okay.
'Cause
Why?
I feel like that was especially with one of your bigger fans, you're one of your biggest fans, Leslie. Poor Leslie
Poor
is
Leslie.
terrified of spiders, yet she read through it, and sh
Hmm.
I kudos to her. So
Yeah,
the reason I wanna talk about it is because
very
spiders
brave.
can be such an off-putting thing to read, to go into, but it can also be the perfect thing if that's the tone you're going for, right? So were you even concerned about that, or were you like, "No, this is what I need, and this is what the story needs?"
I mean, they're on the cover.
So just yeah.
Nobody in their right mind puts friggin' spiders on a cover. It will turn everybody off. But at the same time, it's like, I need you to know walking in what you're walking into.
Right.
And if this is going to make you not get the book, then you need to not read the book.
So I think Leslie should be given, like, I don't know, a prize, an award, or
Yeah.
something for going through, because I know she's terrified of them. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
And I wrote it with her in mind. I was like, yeah, I think we're gonna haunt Leslie's dreams,
Poor Leslie.
right? So for
Uh,
me, it's Adrian Tchaikovsky with
oh, true, true.
Children of Time, right?
Spider-Light Chronicles too.
And Werner Binge with Deepness in the Sky, I think is the one with the spiders. And spiders are much more palatable in a book
Right.
because you've got that visual removal, and part of what we react to is the legs and the way that they
True.
move. So in a book, you can kind of get yourself away from them a little bit. Hopefully, you still have that reaction. My son was like, "No, they're not scary at all." It's like, you're an idiot.
Oh my gosh.
But
Uh,
and spiders have this long tradition in fantasy
they
as
do.
being, this kind of really interesting monster. And once I decided I wanted them in there, I wanted the most memorable spiders that you've ever read. So outside, kind of intelligent talking spiders that you've got in the Werner Vinge story
Mhm.
or Children of Time, I'm hoping that they leave an I
They
think they got Mirkwood beat, honestly.
well, they leave an impression. That's the best way to say it without spoilers. They leave an impression, especially the first encounter.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was exactly what my son was like. That's not scary. I was like, you're pretending.
No,
If
no,
you
like
weren't freaked out by that, I don't know if you're alive. Yeah, because that end of the first
yeah.
because that end of the first act, like it so when I was putting together the story, originally I wanted it to be kind of like one book. And then when I got to the end of the first act, I realized there's no way this is going to be one book unless I want it to be a quarter of a million words long. And I don't want to
Mm,
do a quarter of a million word book.
right.
Because trying to trim down the introduction of the Locke Institute and how it works and how it's kind of got two faces to it was important to me, and it needed to have that emotional hit, with the initial way that you're brought in to the Locke Institute. That's
Yep.
worth a chapter, you
Oh,
know.
yeah.
Right, and the introduction of the camps, that's worth a chapter. The introduction of the spiders, that's worth a chapter. Um,
Yep.
so I couldn't go any faster than I did. But that first act I love so much because the whole time you're building to that, and you kind of reference it a little bit earlier and you kind of hint
Mm,
at it, but then you get there to the end of the first act and it's like, oh my God. And that I always loved the idea of at sunset, X happens.
right.
And that idea bubbles so well because it's that ingrained fear of the dark. And at sundown, here comes the werewolf, here comes the this, here
Right.
comes the
Here comes the
vampires
big
can't come
baddie.
out during the sunlight. And being able to do that tied to sunset was
Mm.
made me really, really happy.
Yeah, I'd say you pulled it off because going through that chapter, I could not put it down when you meet them, and then the continuing chapters after, I was just like, okay, keep going." Like, I don't wanna put it down.
Well, and I'm gonna try and do this without spoilers, but for
Mm,
you, the originally it was cages, right? Because the whole thing is based
okay.
on Papillon, which is a
Yeah, yeah.
story about French Guiana and two guys that are in this penal colony and try to escape, right? It's an old Steve
Right.
McQueen movie. All the Steve McQueen movies were about escaping. And so it was based on that. I was like, originally it was cages. And I was like, okay,
Mm,
that's fine, but we're in a fantasy book. Let's do something different. And then it
mm,
became, okay, cages at night because you have to close yourself in from the thing that's going to get you. And then it became, well, get rid of the cages and replace them with a plant. And that
mm,
was the thing that
right.
really kind of took it over the top. It was like, okay,
Yeah.
we've got this whole natural environment that they're taking advantage of. And that I loved that.
Yeah, I can see that. Going through that entire process, just as you explained it, it's fascinating. I I can see where the world building would become where would you wanna stop, right? When you're building your world and you're pulling from these references and these ideas and it just keeps getting better and better and you're getting more excited about all these aspects and you keep building, where's the point where you stop
Yeah.
building these elements in the world?
At the end of part one,
"Andy, there's more books."
I mean, we've got some long reveals about the island waiting in book two
Yeah,
and three. The whole Gerba motivation thing, but how the Locke Institute works
right.
is you got to wrap that up at the end of one because you can't explain anymore. Now I need relationships,
Mm,
and it's like actually I'm going to raise my hand and I'm going to spoil it for people. There's no way to talk about this book without saying that Jack's in it.
Right.
one, I think it's okay because the reveal on Jack works whether you know he's going to be in it or not.
Yeah.
And then two,
It's really early on that you find out
yeah, it's really early
Jack's
on,
story.
and if you know it's coming, it's still going to surprise you. Okay, cool,
Mhm.
great. But what I love is that the whole first half of the book, you keep these guys apart,
Mm.
right? And it's not until you get to the middle that you finally bring them back together. Part of the reason for that is because you're introducing how this whole thing goes.
Right.
And the moment you're done with Act One, okay, fine, we got our setup taken care of, character,
Right.
because that's why everybody's in the door, right?
Yeah.
You're not there to see the spiders, you're there to see the relationship
You
between
don't know that.
these. You may be there for the spiders, and you'll be perfectly fine in
There you
Act Two
go.
and Three and One. Yeah, you'll be fine.
Okay. No, it's interesting. So for you, your world building, you take it as far as you need to for the story. And
Yeah,
then if you need to develop more world building for the story to work, you develop it. You
yeah,
kinda go as needed.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it was like, blackjack. Okay, take blackjack as an
Mhm.
example. You do the whole build with Valerian about the great bells and how they work and why they're broken as a
Yeah.
reason to set up Jack. It's like,
Yes.
you're the only guy that can do this. Okay. As soon as you're done explaining that stuff, then, you're just moving forward with character and
Right.
breaking expectations. Like, the place where in Blackjack where Rooker you get the spiders, in Blackjack that's where all these people that you thought you were going to be part of his adventure are gone,
Right.
right? And you just kind of break the
Mhm.
expectation there. It's like, okay, where are we going now?
Yeah.
And I love surprises because being
Mm.
kept on edge and kind of breaking the norms, because there's a structure to a story and there's a reason there's a structure to a story because it works,
Yeah.
right? We're conditioned to feel like this is the way things should be, and
Mhm.
keeping that structure is good, but making sure you've got some surprises where the reader doesn't get ahead of you,
Right.
is important because I start to get bored at that point.
Right. You wanna keep some secrets to yourself as the author while you're writing and still making it interesting, but not giving away too much and foreshadowing that your readers are gonna figure it out.
Yeah, that's where the smart readers come in. Like, you think you're
Yeah.
foreshadowing something, and then everybody gets there before you on the beta read. It's like, oh, 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 oh.
Right. Those are the ones taking notes.
Yeah. It's
They have
like,
their own little notebook.
okay, gonna take some of those out. Okay, good.
There you go. So what was the beta reading process like for you? Have you done beta reading before? Was this your first time having beta readers?
Poor Gloria,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
She's always the first victim. So for me, I write a version that's just for me, and it's mainly for me because no other human being can read it because it's
Right.
garbage. But I can read
Yeah.
between the beats and, does this work? Does this work? Does this work? Okay,
Mm,
cool. And then you write a good version of it. And in this case, what I did was I sent it to a dev editor. I actually hired a dev editor and said, okay, here's the
right.
bones are still brittle enough that I can break them without feeling bad about it.
Right.
What doesn't work? And then she came back and said, okay, I'm confused here. I don't understand this. This really worked, blah, blah, blah. Then you do a good job on it, and then you send it to the alpha readers. I actually didn't wind up with beta readers this time. And the alpha
Okay.
readers jumped all over it. And like, that's where you figure out whether you've got something that works or not for real.
Mm,
And then you just start making, but it was great having one, two, three, four, five, six people read it before we got to the proofread, because I think that helps a lot. You can't take all of the notes,
yeah.
because some people will say, "Oh, this part moves fast," and another person will say, "This part moves slow." Right? There's nothing you can do about that. It's just a
Yeah.
question of taste, and you can't make everybody happy, or you'll wind up driving yourself crazy. But having the opinions, especially where they're confused, and especially on the emotional beats that work, right?
Mm,
Because
yeah.
you've got 5 beats in the book that you need an emotional reaction from the audience on those, and when they have the reaction, did a good job, and when they don't have a reaction, it's like, uh-oh, not fix, and it
Yeah.
gives you the opportunity to fix things, which is great.
That is true. And that's an important, thing to recognize too is you don't have to take all of the feedback. it's still your story. You know what's going to work for it in the end because you know where the rest of the story is going to go in the next 2 books.
Yeah.
So you also know how to balance that out. Plus, you've been doing this for so long in terms of storytelling. You know where you need to balance things, and you can make your judgment calls as you need to. But it's good to have the feedback and have that level of comfort with saying, I appreciate, you know, what you think on this. Unfortunately, for what I think is going to happen or what needs to happen, I can't change anything.
And
That that
that's
is a
like,
trait.
and that's like 5% of them, right?
Right.
Just a
Yeah.
couple of notes that you blow off.
Oh, yeah, but it's still something I find that would be daunting for new authors, for example. If they're going this for the first time, it's their first time having beta readers, would they feel intimidated? They might, it depends on the person, but it's a good thing to remember you don't have
Be
to take all
careful
that.
who you listen to. I'm sure you
Yeah.
saw the post from Cahill
Yeah.
yesterday where he was
Yes,
just
I
like,
did.
"Hey, you know what? Right before I published my book, somebody told me I was going to embarrass myself if I published this, and I
Yeah.
didn't listen to them, thank God."
Yes.
Right? You got to be
Yeah.
careful about. I mean, this is why you ask certain people,
Mhm.
that you trust, and you trust their opinion. You also
Right.
you also have to trust them to not go, "Oh, good job, good for you." Right? That is not
Right.
useful. You need somebody who's willing to punch you in the face and go, "That's not
Yeah.
right." That's what you need. So yeah, for new writers, right? Don't listen to the critics. Fix things that are unclear and fix
Mhm.
things that don't have an emotional impact. Beyond that, write your story.
Well said. Well said. We're gonna say hello to a few folks. We've got Melissa in the chat. Welcome. Good to see you.
Hey,
You're in. You made it. Don't
look
worry.
at
You
that
didn't
hat.
miss anything. We've got Andrew Wizard here as well. New phone, who dis? He I love you too, Andrew. Thank you. And he has a demand. You must always take his feedback.
Right. I think Andrew has been mentioned in every book ever since Blackjack. Although so have you. So
Yeah, and hey, there you go. I'm an elite club. I like it.
you guys are in the
Thank you for
acknowledgments for all time.
that. Thank you for that, by the way. It's when you sent this copy of the Crimes of Ricker Flynn, I was flipping through and I saw you highlighted my name in the acknowledge. I'm like, I would have missed that. I might have missed it for months if you didn't.
I'm
Thank you.
glad that I highlighted it then.
Yep.
Who reads the acknowledgments?
I actually will. Once I'm done the book. I typically read them once I'm done the book. So, like I said, it would have been a while before I would
Yeah,
have seen
right.
it.
And they're in the
Uh,
audiobook as well, thank God.
yes, yes, I heard that. So we also have Medic here as well. Welcome. And so we do have a question from Cinna. And Daniel did address this, but I'm going to bring it to you since you are the OG keymark expert here. Uh, do I need to read Blackjack first?
Uh, Cinna, it actually says on the very first thing that when you open the Crimes of Rooker Flynn that you do not need to read the Crimes of Blackjack in order to enjoy this story. Everything you need to know is contained within. In fact, I think I can probably pull that up for you right now, along with the map. And what I wanted to do was just leave the door open, right? I think you're going to have a more rounded experience if you read Legend of Blackjack first, but you are not going to be
Mhm,
missing anything if you walk in the door on this story and just go, "Hey, what's going on?" Right?
mhm.
Somebody read it and they liked it. You don't need to go back and read Legend of Blackjack. You might wind up reading it after you read this one, but no, you don't. It was really important to me that Blackjack not be a requirement.
Yeah, I will say there is like maybe references to some characters that you won't have you won't know who they are, but it's not that they're pertinent to the story in the Crimes of Rooker Flynn. They're just mentions.
Yeah,
So up to you on the kind of experience you want to have, but you definitely don't need to read it, I don't think, in
right.
order to dive into the Crimes of Rooker Flynn. It's kind of like you said, it's a bonus.
It's a bonus. Yeah, but if the whole idea was if you read it and you said, "Oh, I like this," and I want to give it to a friend, the answer to "Do I have to read Blackjack?" is no. because
Yeah.
we all know we all know what that's like, where it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, especially the ones where it's like, oh, in book 3 it gets really good. It's like I got to read 2 books before this thing's, oh
And
god.
they might be like 1,000 pages each
Right.
before you get to book 3.
That was
Uh,
the other thing, is that you know, like I said, I didn't want to write a quarter of a million word book. I wanted something that you
mm.
could get through quickly. And it's just like, okay, you don't need to commit to that much. And if you hate it after the first book, dump it. You haven't wasted that much time.
Yeah, it's, and see, Cinna says here, "I'm an egger." So Easter egg hunter. That's what I'm, getting out of that, and rounded experience. She loves it. So, yeah, if I'd say if you love knowing all the nitty-gritty stuff and definitely The Legend of, Blackjack, give it a try. We were talking about earlier where it works for all ages, same applies. You're just dealing with a younger character in that one. But you still delve into some pretty dark scenes in that one too. Not as often as The Crimes of Rooker Flynn,
Right.
but there are a couple dark scenes in that as well.
Right. What do you it bugs me a little bit when people talk about blackjack being whimsical, and it is, but right,
But
there are pieces and moments that are in there that are not for fun.
mm,
And there's a lot to be said, in that book and about that book. So, it always makes me a little nervous when there's, oh, it's a romp. It's like, yeah, it's a quick read
with trauma.
with drama. Well, that was the
uh,
other thing about Rooker Flynn, is being, because Jack's got his trauma, Rooker's got his, and you read that prologue like 2 years ago, right? When it was like, 8 pages. And
mm,
being able to write that trauma that is centered and grounded in the fantasy world and what's possible for horribleness there, made it so much fun, because you just wind up putting in that backstory and building on that. It's like, oh, okay, here we go.
right. I feel like fantasy readers are just a different breed because we read fantasy stories go really dark and they can get into some pretty crazy scenarios and topics. And at a certain point, the more you read, the more normal it becomes. And I don't know that that's a good thing. Um, but it's
I
a
think it becomes almost a requirement at some point, where
yeah,
it's like, you know what, I need the trauma.
yeah. Yeah, you need that emotional kick, and it is concerning. We're gonna come back to that, though, because Andrew has a question here. How freeing was it to not include illustrations in The Crime of Rooker Flynn this time? Because there
I
are
had to.
20 illustrations
Yeah,
in
Blackjack 21, 21
yeah.
illustrations. And yeah, and that was even after a couple of them got taken out. And I was convinced that I had to do illustrations for Rooker. And then I did Tale of the Border Night, and I sent that art. Art got done for Tale of the Border Night. I sent that art to you. And I said, "What do you think of this?" And you're like, And I was like, "I think too." And so
Mm,
it got, shit canned for Tale of the Border Night. And then when we got to Rooker, it was just like, one, I don't have the money. Two, I don't have the time. And three, I need to find out if I can write without pretty pictures. and I s- and I still get my Kurt Vonnegut drawings,
mhm.
throughout. So that makes me happy, because I love having those in there. One, because it breaks up the visual of it, and two, it gets to convey something that's outside of just words for a little bit. I think that's a
Mm,
ton of fun. I think that's a big part of what makes a lot of Vonnegut books really fun. Is here's a drawing. I'm just gonna
yeah.
throw this in there. Here's a bunny.
Yeah, they are nice to see because it helps, like, for me, I find, especially with magical creatures, it's hard for me to visualize what the authors, you do a great job at describing it. It's my brain, I promise. I have a hard time imagining what the creature is supposed to look like based on what you're imagining and what you're trying to describe. So for me, even just those Seeds of War has it by Joao Silva, which is just like a little illustration guide at the
Yep.
beginning of the book. It's like 6 creatures, you know what they look like, so when the name comes up, don't have to worry so much about the description. Those kind of like it's 6 little pictures. That's it.
Yep.
That's great. You don't need a ton, and it depends on the age group you're looking at as
Mhm.
well to market to, and I think YA people, you can read this. Just, be prepared. Like we were talking about earlier, that trauma, might be the start of your kick.
I don't want to open a whole can of worms because I know
No.
this is a controversial topic, but to me, Red Rising
Okay.
is kind of built to be a YA book or at least service a YA audience, and it addresses a
Yeah.
lot of really dark stuff in there as well. So I
Yep.
do think the two can go together. And I also think categorizing things can be really tough,
Mm.
especially for me, because I'm not committed to one specific bucket of fantasy.
Well, and that's a good point. Like there are so many subgenres, so many categories, so many different, aspects and elements that can go into fantasy. Trying to write reviews on fantasy books, I have to think, okay, how many different genres or elements of genres did I find in this book? And now I have to like list them out to make sure people know what they're in for. Because if they're looking to my reviews for a guide on, a filter on what they should read, well, I hope first of all I don't lead you astray. That's a that's a
Right.
hefty, responsibility, but 2, if there's even elements of horror, some people have no tolerance for that. That's hard for them, and so it's such a there's so many subcategories, so many different things coming out in fantasy, which is amazing because authors, you're taking your creativity to a wide scope, which is great. But it also means that there's all these new subcategories coming up, like with Grimdark, right? Joe Abercrombie, Grimdark, that was a whole thing. Now we have Grimdark everywhere, and everyone's just loving Grimdark. First of all, I love Grimdark too, but I feel like we all need something a little happier in our lives,
Right.
and that's probably where cozy fantasy came in.
Right. Cozy fantasy is a reaction to grimdark, which will
Yes,
then cause a
absolutely.
reaction against cozy fantasy back over to something that isn't grimdark,
Yeah.
but something else.
Yeah, I'm gonna read this grimdark book, and just to make me a little bit happier, I'm gonna have a hot chocolate with my cozy fantasy after the nightmares. So, yeah, it's how what do you think of all the subcategories with fantasy and all
I
all
don't
these
think
different
we can
elements?
even categorize grimdark well. I'd forget the rest of them. Right? You have
There
somebody,
okay.
you get four reviewers in a room about what is grimdark, you'll get five
Yeah,
opinions.
it's so true. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, is
different
Brooker
levels.
grimdark? I don't know. I don't think so. Does it have dark elements to it? Okay, where does that put it on the scale? I don't know. I don't know.
Just arbitrary labels to help pitch books. Is
Yeah.
that
Well, it just kind of gives you a feel, right? Every
right?
book has a tone.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
but like, how do you describe, okay, what is the tone and style of Kings of the Wild?
Mm.
Yeah. Crazy? Crazy. Is crazy a style?
Yeah, let's make it a style. Put that in a review.
It doesn't stop me from loving it. It doesn't
No.
stop me from going head over heels. In the fact that it doesn't match anything else is
Mm,
actually a benefit for me because it's
yeah,
not trying to compete with other things. It's kind of its own little universe there.
yeah.
It's just like, okay, yeah, I'll play your game. You're crazy, but I'll play your game.
So, do you think it's a benefit then to kind of be a pioneer of those tones? Let's just say that.
I, you know,
There we go. Medic says Kings of the Wild is rock band fantasy.
rock band fantasy. We're going to make a new genre. Ames is the leader. We're just going to follow wherever he goes. The um, sorry,
No, that was my
the
fault.
answer is I like surprises. Right?
Mm,
I really like you thinking you know where we're going,
yeah.
and you don't. Right? If I can lead you down this path and then break you off this way, oh,
Mm,
okay, I got your attention again. Right?
right.
Okay, now where are we going? I got you for maybe three more chapters.
Mm,
Right? And I can do character stuff. I can talk about
yeah.
emotions. I can try and make you feel something. And then I'll break you off and we'll go over this way. Right? And
Mhm.
leading you along a standard well-worn path, I think is dull.
Mm.
I think that's part of the reason Abercrombie worked so well when it came out is because you really hadn't seen anything like that. Like Game of Thrones was big and it was coming around, and
Right.
everybody was kind of wanted something like that. And then he came and said, "You know what? I'm going to double down on this. You think you saw Dark already? Hang on a second. I'm going to show you Pointless."
That is a brilliant, description of it. Utterly pointless.
I'm going to show you futility, which is the way of the world.
Yep.
And look,
Wow.
that book doesn't work. Abercrombie doesn't work because of the style. It doesn't work because it was this pioneer in grimdark, right? It
Mhm.
works because you are so invested in two of the characters
Yes.
that you cannot stop being
Yep.
involved with Logan and Glockta, right?
Mhm.
It didn't matter what the story was. You
Nope.
wanted to see what these guys were going to do next. And they
Yep.
would always break in a way that you didn't think that they were going to break. And it got more and more fun as it went.
Yeah, and, I know for myself in the original like, the First Law trilogy, and once I got to the very end of that trilogy, the rug swept out from under me, and I was like, "I sold." I didn't love everything, but sold.
So,
You know? It's, yeah, I'll completely agree with that. Glokta, fantastic. Logan, chaos.
right.
And you have your wacky characters in between.
Well, and the whole reason I'm there is
Mm,
for the characters. I have never
yeah.
met a plot that I fell in love with, right?
Right.
If you can make me fall in love or be super intrigued or just love being with this person, you got me. You got me. I'll
Right.
go wherever you want to. I don't care. Switch genres in the middle. Go from fantasy to sci-fi. I don't care. I'll do it.
Nice. Yeah, so okay, well let's speaking of, have you been doing any reading? Because I know you got a lot of stuff going on in the background with writing, but have you had time for any reading?
So we did the readathon, and I
Yes.
got three indies in, and I got Joe
Nice.
number three in, and I got, oh boy, what am I missing?
So when you say Joe number 3, we're talking about the hybrid
JCM Burn
helix.
number
Yeah,
three,
yeah.
Hybrid Helix number three, and then I got
This bad boy right
it was
here.
Andy Weir. I finally got there's my Blood Reunion, which is I think where like Joe really comes into his own. I think he's a good writer in the first two books. I think he really steps it up in the third one. It's like, yeah, 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 I'm here.
Yeah.
And then I got my Andy Weir in with Project Hail Mary.
Nice.
That was nice to finally get that one taken care of. I got Live Ship trilogy taken care of and done, which I really, really like. And if it hadn't been for the reviewers punching me in the face and telling me you got to read this, you got to read this, you got to read this, I wouldn't have. Because
Right.
I read Assassin's Apprentice a long time ago. I was just like, okay.
Yeah.
And then I read it the second time. I was like, okay, but I don't really get what all the fuss is about. And then the
Mhm.
more, I mean, she's one of the ones where you can't stop at the end of book one and feel like you got the experience,
You have to keep reading.
right? You need to finish up Farseer and see what you think. I didn't even like the end of Farseer, but I was entranced enough to say,
Right.
wow, I just really like her as a writer. So
Yeah.
what does she got next? And then okay, let's do live shit.
Right. So, that's an interesting distinction because you have got 2 sales pitches there, right? Because you have your, like, the ones where it's like, "Oh, wait, you gotta get to book 3 before it gets really good."
Right.
But then you also have the appreciation for the author and their writing style, their storytelling style enough to keep reading despite the storyline maybe not working for you entirely.
Isn't that Erickson in a nutshell? I mean, everybody, I can't remember which Erickson book, but everybody hates one of them. Right.
To be fair, there are a lot of those books, a lot of pages to
Right.
those books. But it's true, the sales pitch for Ericsson for me was, Steve we're talking about the Malazan series just for anyone listening, was, "Yeah, okay, so we're gonna need you to read this 20,000 page series, and in order for you to understand it, you're gonna have to read it a second time."
Yeah.
So
Now you go back.
yeah, once you're done reading it, come back. And I'm not saying anything bad about it. I wholly loved the books that I did read. I have my favorites out of the ones that I did, and one that didn't quite work for me, but is a favorite to many others. And that is the beautiful thing of writing
Right.
and reading, right? You have completely different audiences, and you get people who are oh, I'm blanking on the name. Reviewer and author Francisca Lillian. I think she's entirely devoured the Malazan series, and all of the shoot offs as well by a different author who took up the world. It I am so impressed. It so there are audiences that just devour those books and those series, and it's okay to fall in the middle.
Yeah.
I think it's that, you're gonna find those very passionate people. Like, I've run into people in the stores going book shopping, and I'm looking at a book and someone stops me and they're like, "Hey, I'm gonna tell you why you should read this, and I'm gonna be here for the next 20 minutes telling you why you should be reading
Right.
this. I'm gonna leave and then I'm gonna come back and tell you that thought I forgot."
I'm listening. I'm listening. Okay. Okay. I'll get the book.
Yeah, I'll buy the book, good. Madison, we have Madison in the house. Welcome. Good to see you.
Hey, Mads.
Yep, Madison talk. Yeah, Madison, do you have, thoughts on that? I see the zipper on on that emoji.
Oh, I see Derry there. Derry was one of the
Oh,
people
Derry
that
jumped
demanded
in.
I keep going with Hob, and I'm glad she did.
There,
That
and
was
yes,
the
summoned. Welcome, Terry.
that was one of the things that tied in. One of the reasons that I wanted to get to live ship is that I was concerned. Rooker has a ship called the Venture Brigand. It
Mm,
is more than meets the eye and becomes more so over the course. And I was terrified that I was going to get dinged for ripping off live ships. And I was so glad to find out, okay, that is entirely different than what I'm dealing with here. Okay, cool,
right.
great, fine, fantastic. Because I thought, oh my gosh, somebody's going to burn me down for ripping this off when I've never actually read the book.
How dare you?
Right?
Oh, hey, we got Mike. He's been lurking. Good to see you, Mike.
Mike. Mike and Andrew, both of whom I was planning or was offered to get together with on the October 25th.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I love a sentient ship.
Yeah.
Can I ask you,
Mm,
when you're going through Rooker and you're reading it, at what moment do you feel like you got invested in this story? Because it's
mm.
clearly entirely different from Blackjack. And it's like a big risk. Right?
It
So because you're kind of
mhm,
you're just hoping the audience is going to come along with you long enough that you can go, oh, okay, I'm in.
mhm.
Did that happen for you early? Did that happen for you late? Did that happen for you at all?
It happened for me early, I would
Okay,
say. And, um it's hard to say because I'm partly biased because I really enjoyed his character in Legend of Black Jack. I was really excited to read more about his character because you did hint to some things with him, in terms of his behavior and interactions that he and Jack had. So when it came to, you start off the book with being in Rooker's eyes rather than just him being a side character. I was like, okay, I'm curious. Let's see where this goes. And then you threw in the banter right at the beginning. And can I say what the scene is because it's pretty early. It's like the first
yeah.
chapter. So
Anything in part one is fair game.
perfect. So it's the interaction he has with the mermaid. And for anyone who's read it, I died laughing because that summed up his character beautifully and how much that bites him in the behind later. That is he is his own worst enemy, and
Yes,
you make
thank
it
you.
evident early on. So, yes, if you have not read The Crimes of Rooker Flint and you don't know what I'm talking about, go read the intro because that just exchange was perfect. It gives you a great idea of what kind of character you're dealing with.
Oh, that makes me happy. Well, because you can do it's in chapter one, and
Mhm.
you're kind of with them, and you've got this
Yep.
romantic setup.
Oh,
Like, it's
yeah.
all very flowery and beautiful and loving
Yep.
and kind, and then you yank the rug out, and you know good dialogue when you read good dialogue. You're like, okay, I did my job here, but what I like is exactly what you said. It comes back to bite him. Like, all of
Yes.
it would be funny, but it's better because it all comes back to get him in the end, and it's just like, okay, we got an opening.
Yeah. Verbatim as well. It's not just like, it comes to comeuppance. It's she comes right back for him with the exact same line, you know? It was just really well pulled off, and Madison says, "Yeah, first chapter got me hooked." So, yeah,
I
I
gotta tell you
again
how much fun it was to write that romantic
yeah, because
moment,
you make it seem like, "Oh, yeah, they're in love, it's great."
because I never get to write that stuff. Like, that's
Right.
not part of the story yet. And so
Mhm.
being able to play in, like, cartoon version of play in that world where it's just like everything is wonderful, and
Yeah.
that was so much fun to write. Oh, thanks.
And then you just went down the hill and you're like, "Oh, Trauma Valley."
You suck.
Maybe
This
we'll
guy
get there.
sucks. The other guy sucks. Everybody sucks. She sucks the most.
Yep, just all of it. Matt here says, "Yes, a sentient, ship feels so natural to me. I feel a ship ultimately guides and is in charge of its own destiny. I love the concept." Yep.
Yeah, I did too. And the thing that made me happy about Live Ship is, okay, I've got figureheads that have faces and arms and turn and talk. And okay, I'm not playing in that world. And so that made it all okay. And then the other thing that I like, I mean, what Live Ship does is the thing that we
Mhm.
all pray for, is that it has these magnificent character arcs that span over the course of 3 books. And she
Mhm.
doesn't get you where you're going right in the beginning, and she's got you totally hooked. Like Althea, anything with Althea, I will read her any minute of the day just because I'm completely invested in who she is because
Right.
of all that trauma at the beginning. She was treated badly. This is wrong. This is the expectations. This is the way it worked out. Screw you. That's not the way it was supposed to go. So I'm completely on her side
Right.
right from the beginning and throughout. But her being able to do that with live ships as actual characters in the book, that was tough.
So okay, I have a burning question for you, and you might not have an answer, you might not, and that's totally fine. But now that you've got the trilogy of Rooker,
Mhm.
you said you've got the stories for all the other characters in Keymark. Who's up to bat next? Who are you gonna write next?
I didn't think anybody would ask this question.
Well, welcome to Kayla's burning questions for more books, please.
So, okay. So, okay.
If you
I
had to
mean,
pick your personal favorite,
I'm terrified of saying it because I hate talking about things that aren't done,
because
right?
Andrew will
Because
find
it's
you.
all, oh, it's going to be this, right?
Right.
I hate that. But
You
I
don't have to
feel,
say necessarily what the story would be. It can just be a character you would like to explore next.
yeah. So I'll answer it this way. If the first book is about the period in your life when your parents are the most important thing, and the father figure aspect is the most important thing to you, right? That's Blackjack. Then you
Mm,
move on in your life and you go away from your parents, and your friends become the most important thing. And that's what the
mm.
Rooker story is about. Is all once you get to down because it's hard to see at the end of the first book, but once you get down to the all three, it's like, oh, okay, this is what this period in your life is. And then
Right.
in my mind, what comes after friendship is romance. So
Oh. Oh. Okay, well, I'm gonna overthink on that unnecessarily for a long time now.
well,
And
and like I said, writing that romantic scene at the beginning of the first book made me not scared of it anymore. And
Right.
I'm reading a lot of books that I would not normally read right now, so I can get all of the standard things taken care of and know kind of what's expected, and then figure out a couple of things that stand that on its head, and then be able to figure out where to go on my own way. But at the end of the day, it's the whole thing's a coming of age story. We don't
Mhm.
stop when you're 14.
No, not at all. It's the 30, still trying to figure it out.
That's everybody. Nobody's
Yeah.
done.
No, and you go through all different stages, right? Every year, every experience you go through, there's some new milestone, some new experience you need to figure out for the first time, whether it's being a parent, whether it's going to college, whatever the case. And then you think you got everything figured out when you're a parent, and then you realize they get 1 year older and you're like, "Oh dear God."
Oh,
I have no clue what I'm doing.
well, God is laughing the entire time because he's like, 5 years from now, you're not going to recognize this person.
Yes. Yeah, that the person you knew, like, when they were 2, they are no longer that person.
They're gone.
They will never be that person again, and I get why people, when I'm walking down the street with my little one, they stop me and they're like, "Oh, savor these moments." Absolutely, I understand it. I'm allowed to have bad days, but I completely understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. The well, and my dad always said that my job as a parent is to teach myself out of a job. And
Oh,
as
interesting.
much as you love them when they're 2 or 5 or
Mhm.
7, right? Somewhere around 7 is where innocence stops, and you start seeing
Yeah.
cynicism come into their eyes, right? As much as you love them when they're that phase, if you
Mhm.
left them there, you would have failed because you need to teach them to graduate from you, right? You
Yes.
need to not need me
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah. Yeah, you need to do your laundry, not me. But I think too that another one I heard recently was oh, I can't remember exactly where I saw it, but it was a younger gentleman, and he plays on a team, sports team, and he was talking about his coach's view on parenting that he shared with him, which was parents are coaches. They can never play the game. They can only ever give support, advice, be there, but they cannot get on the field and play the game for their children. They will be there, but they can't play. And I think that's a really good way of looking at it too. You can be there to say, hey, this is if you want my advice, this is how you might want to handle this situation. You can be there to feed them to keep them alive. you
Right.
know,
This is
right?
good. You should keep
But
them alive.
but you can't take their science exams. You can't play their games for them. You can't do their ballet recitals for them. You have to sit in the audience and go, "Yay!" and support and cheer them on and do what you can and shell out the money to give them those ballet lessons,
Yeah.
right? And take them to the practices. You're being a taxi for them, all those things.
Yeah.
And that's how I try and remember it is like, what kind of coach would I want,
Yeah.
right? What kind of coach would I want on my side if I'm playing a game?
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, and part of that is in that friendship stage
Mhm.
is the people who are with you in that friendship stage when you exit your parents being the most important thing and before you find someone to love, those
Mhm.
people that are in your life give terrible advice because they're the same age as you, they're just as stupid as you, right? They all think they know what's going on. Oh, they're going to
Mm.
tell you how to deal with him, or oh, you're going to tell you how to
Yep.
take care of this problem or cheat on this test. They've all got it figured out, and you're all listening to each other like a bunch of morons, getting it wrong, 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 wrong. And that's where the learning happens: is getting it wrong enough times to where you
Yeah.
finally start getting it right.
Yes, absolutely. I There's a movie that handles that topic really well, Meet the Robinsons.
Yeah,
They handle that beautifully. They actually celebrate mistakes because you learn more from your mistakes than you do success. Same thing.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
Under
the whole I mean, not to go on about
Yeah.
parenting for too long, but the
No,
whole
no, that's fine.
helicopter parenting thing is like the worst service you can offer your children because all you're doing is protecting them, and they need to fall on their face, and they need to get it wrong, and they need to get an F, and they need to get caught stealing, right?
Yeah.
Like, all of that stuff needs to happen because you just
Yep.
telling them is not going to do it. The words don't work, the action does.
Yeah, and they need consequences, right? If something goes wrong, that's the consequences of it. They need
Yeah.
to understand that. you know, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That's that's what happens.
I love that expression.
So Madison has a thought on this romance stage coming up. My mind is already spinning with the interspecies problems of romance in this series. Okay.
Among the things that I'm not dealing with, that's one of them.
Completely understandable. Tim
Just put up a
agrees.
big iron wall there and say, "Hey, guess what? No."
Yeah, we got Tim agreeing with the you never stop learning. And yet here we are talking sci-fi and fantasy. Yep.
That see, the reason for sci-fi and fantasy is not it's not escapism for children. It's escapism for everybody. That's why there's so many different genres
Mm,
and so many different needs that it's feeding. Part of the reason that we read sci-fi and fantasy is just a dislike of the way
mm,
the real world actually works. And that's very natural. Now, it can be unhealthy if all you're doing is escaping, right? Then you get
mhm,
into, drug abuse territory, right? But with fantasy books, all of us hate certain parts about the world, and it does give us a method to be able to, like, what's great about fantasy and sci-fi is that it allows you to take the rules of everything that's in your world and jettison it, right?
mhm.
And I'm going to go
Yeah.
somewhere else where the rules are really great or really terrible or really specific, and be able to deal with that for a while. And it's
Mhm,
just that pressure relief valve is the most fantastic thing about it. Because you get to jump entirely out of your world. It's not
mhm.
like a romance or a fiction or especially nonfiction, right? It gives you the
Yeah.
opportunity to really pull the ripcord and go bye.
Well, and you also get, a frame of reference because sometimes we get so lost in our own lives, like, "I've got all these problems, I'm not doing as well as I should," a lot of self-criticism, and then you read a book and you're like, "That guy's got it way worse than me. I got my life somewhat together in comparison." When you read what these, characters go through,
Yeah,
right? And all these, like, high stakes, and it makes me feel a little bit better about my life.
right. Every time another going back to Robin Hobb again. Every time
Yeah.
somebody gripes about a character making bad choices, it's like, what are you talking about? This is for you. This is
Yeah.
for you to feel better about who you are and to
Yes.
explore the consequences of what these choices would have been.
Yep. Yes. So it's well, I'm sure we could go on and on and on.
I wouldn't mind.
Alright. Are you game for another, like, 10
Yeah, if
minutes?
you've got time, I've got time. Besides,
Alright.
I just love seeing you and talking to you. And by
Likewise.
the way, I hope next time we do one of those little chat rooms in the Discord that you're
Yeah.
actually we might try and plan it so you absolutely are available because it was just nice. It was just nice to sit and chat.
Yeah. And I would have loved to, it just did not work
No,
out
it just wasn't a
scheduling-wise.
thing for you that day.
No, and I always say I'm up against the needs and demands of my toddler overlord. So,
Yeah,
if in that case, my husband wasn't there to take care of him, but yes, absolutely. If, we can get another one in, that would be awesome. But, yes, so, let's dive into Hob, because Hob, like you, I read Assassin's Apprentice long time ago, never moved on with it,
okay.
and
Thank you. Okay, okay.
we've been seen. So, Derry, don't come after me.
I know
Um,
Darius being driven crazy right now.
I have them, Derry. They're on the shelf. It will happen. But so basically, here, hold on. I want to see what Derry says here. Once, Hob once said that she hates when Fitz makes a dumb decision because it adds hundreds of pages to her books. Yeah, but it's a choice he would make. So I went through that similar thing because I think I read it at a stage in my life where I didn't really appreciate it. I was like, okay, that was cool, but and it had some really interesting moments in it, but I didn't quite understand what the hype was about. and why people loved it so much. And like I said, I read this a long time ago. I was probably in my late teens, early 20s. I had very little comparison in fantasy at the time to go off of. And basically what I did was I went, "Ooh, fantasy, that sounds fun. Let's dive in over my head." And now I could see where that entire experience would change because I devour character arcs.
Yeah.
I love them. Give me the trauma.
Yeah.
Give me all of the trauma. I read Anna Smith Sparks' Empire of Dust trilogy. Holy, that I don't think I've ever finished a trilogy that quick
Yeah. That's on
because
my list because of you.
yeah, it's not for everyone.
Well,
I
it's
will say that.
brutal.
It is no one is safe, not the cat, not the dog. Um, and the writing style can be a bit jarring because it is short but poetic. So not everyone likes it. And that's totally fair. I thought I wasn't going to be able to read it because of how dark people were saying it was going to be.
What's a book everybody likes? None of them.
No, but here I was like, okay, so half the people in the read along have DNF this, and yet I am devouring it. And yeah, very memorable first sentence to that series, knives.
Knives.
Knives. Um, and you're just reading a series about terrible people. They're just people at the end of the day, and they've made their choices. They live in a terrible world, so of course their lives are not going to be the greatest, but there's a certain point where you become morbidly fascinated with their psychology, and it's just really interesting how she worked all that. So now, having gone through that and knowing that I do like I knew it before, but not to that extent, where I love those character arcs and that character depth. And like, Derry, you're saying she didn't like the pages and pages that were added to her book because of Fitz making a dumb choice. I'm all in. I would I would be all in on that dumb choice because that would make for some fascinating character developments.
Yeah. Well, this if all they do is the right thing, you have a very boring story, right?
Yeah.
If all they make are correct decisions, if all they do is noble and good and true and straight path, there's nothing there, right?
Mhm.
It's almost like moving a chess piece across the board. It's just like, okay, they do what they're supposed to do. And,
Predictable.
it's much more fun to blow it.
Yeah. It's just make all the crazy things happen. Because
Yeah.
we were talking earlier with parenting, consequences. You make a choice, there's gonna be a consequence to it. And because this is fantasy and you get into sci-fi and stuff, those consequences get high and they go hard. There's
Mhm.
you're dealing with situations in like, oh, you got cut in a fantasy world, you got a little scrape, oh, now you have an infection and now you've lost your arm. Oh, and now you have to live with that. Sorry, pup. Like, how is that going to affect your soldiering career? You might die in the next battle. you know?
Too bad.
Sucks to be you. Oh, you don't like classism? Sorry, you're on the bottom. Talking about the Red Rising. I read the first two books in that trilogy. It was I'm mid. I'm mid. I'm told if I read Morningstar, I will be sold. It's good. It's good for what it is. I really struggled with the first book. Golden Sun was much better.
Okay, I had the opposite experience because the first book and I read both of them with Joe, and we just kind of,
Mhm.
it was nice to have somebody to read with. And the first book I thought was really interesting because of the concepts that got introduced and kind of the world building and, oh, this is how things are. And you get to the end of Act One, and spoiler alert, you kill the main character. That doesn't happen very often. So
Right.
okay, how's this going to go? And so I thought the first book was really interesting. And
Mm.
we've got a magic school at the end of the book.
Yep.
Okay, let's play with that trope and see what he does. He makes something really interesting happen with that. And I thought,
Mm.
okay, cool. And then we got into the second book, and my reaction was like, there's too many politics. I can't play. I don't all the politics. How many of these people am I supposed to remember?
All of them. All of them, Andy.
I can remember the Howlers.
Yeah, okay. I remember them too. I don't remember that. It's been a while, since I've read them, but I think what bugged me about the first one was, just the main character was quite, I felt like he was whiny. I know his situation was really terrible, guys, I know, but it was kind of one of those situations where that was his entire existence,
Okay.
right? It became his entire personality, and I understand that's a huge traumatic thing he went through. But it felt like it was on the page too much for me to really start caring about him. I wanted more dimension to him.
Okay. I'll
Yeah,
buy
I
into that.
I could be completely wrong, but yeah,
No, there is no wrong. This is
well,
your experience. How can that be wrong?
I don't know. It was kind of like the I'm just gonna sound terrible, but when someone whines enough about something that it no longer becomes important to you, like they're complaining about the jam on their toast. It was done enough that I was like, "Okay, yeah, I get it, I get it. I know what happened was terrible. I know the injustice that is being served. You are not any better.
Yeah, we're all
You
very
are."
sad, but at least you've got
Yeah,
toast.
and you have a friend or 2 or, you have to get out.
Well,
Like
and I feel like I'm really glad because I'm finally getting to the point, you've been there for a long time, that I'm
Mm,
starting to be able to have read enough of these books where I can have these conversations with
right.
people and kind of get what they're talking about. Because I feel like in the SFF community, there are maybe like whatever, say 20 series that
Yeah.
are kind of required reading. And
Mm,
I'm starting to work my way through them. Now I'm also finding that I don't like as many of them as much as a lot of other people like them,
right, and that's completely fine.
but some of them I do. Like,
Mm,
Live Ship was a real surprise for me. But like when you look at Fits and Bad Decisions,
mm.
you know, or the whining, I feel like without that stuff, like my one of my problems with Darrow right off the bat was, and Daniel's read them all. One of my problems right off the bat with Red Rising is I felt like he was a jackwad. Right? I felt like he was
Right.
like, I'm a hell diver and I can do anything and I'm the strongest of the bunch.
Yeah.
I'm the man. It's like,
The
okay,
teen,
cool. I'm
I'm
really excited to be
infallible.
reading about you. And I kind of liked the fact that he got beaten down and beat up to the point where he became vulnerable enough.
Right.
But it's interesting how you get kind of two different readers with two different feelings coming
Mhm.
out of that. And that's to me that's the great part about writing is it's the most. I honestly feel like it's the most subjective art form. I'm happy to think our way through this, but
Yeah.
theater, it's handed to you, and that includes movies and live performances. Dance, it is utterly subjective, but also nobody can come out of it telling you exactly what they thought or saw because it goes beyond words, kind of in the same way that
Yeah.
visual representations of art and sculpture do, right?
Yeah.
Whereas with reading, you're being told a story. Stephen King has that psychic connection with you that he always talks about. It's a psychic link that will last until after the author is dead.
Right.
And, but it's the words and the way that we perceive them and what our life
Mhm.
experiences are and what we bring to the table that makes that book what it is. So that psychic communication is is exactly what the author meant, but what
Right.
you take out of it is entirely you.
Oh, yeah.
And
And
I
it depends.
love that.
It's the characters, and I was laughing mainly because of how I was picturing something. So when you were saying, dance is something you can't really describe to someone who hasn't seen it, I was visualizing someone coming out of the theater doing a mock version of the dance they saw to explain it to someone. Yes, interpretive dance. That is why I was laughing. But yes, I it's fascinating because it's also gonna change based on the people you've met. I have characters I despise, or as soon as I start reading them, I'm like, "Nope, met you. I know exactly what we're in for." Yeah, and for Darrow's character, I was like, "Teen angst. Got it. I've met the angsty guy before. Cool." Like 12 of the guys I knew from high school.
Uh,
Except terrible life circumstances.
right. Gloria and I have an expression that we always do for that, which is my life It's like shorthand for the whole thing.
Oh,
Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking
yeah.
about.
Yeah. So in terms of Hob, what is it that sold you on the Lie Ship series versus when you originally read the main trilogy?
So for me, Farseer was interesting in terms of concept. I'm not particularly drawn to an assassin story.
Okay,
Okay.
fair.
Him being trained for that, okay. For me, the first book was like, oh, the lost and lonely foreign boy turns out to be the son of a noble and is taken to the castle and
Right.
and it's like, okay, but I didn't hate it, but I didn't feel like there was a lot there. The details, though, that started to build while we were there is what really made it interesting. And I think Jerry just said it, the villains and
Yeah.
bad guys that you know in real life. Okay. So in the first book, that's got a great villain, right?
Right.
That little prince you just want to rip into pieces and throw in the
Mm.
river. And hating him really a lot um, makes a lot of the first book work. And then with the second book, we get into this really cool emotional dynamic between him and everybody, and we have that ending. That ending
Yeah.
of book two is, I think, the biggest gut punch I've ever experienced in a book,
Okay.
because it was just like, it's the same. Spoiler alert, it's the same thing with Red Rising. We killed the main character,
Right.
right? Whoa,
Excuse me?
right. And it's like, okay, what are we doing from here?
Mhm.
And the way that she wrote that and the emotional effect of, like, literally him, spoiler alert, coming out of the ground, out of his
Mhm.
own grave, that was beautiful. It was
Mm.
so perfect. And then with the third book, I fell in love with Ketrican. I don't know if that's how you
Okay.
pronounce her name, but this kind of noble figure from the mountains who got stuck with the wrong husband and was the exact
Mm.
opposite of him, and she was everything that you would want to be, but couldn't be that because of the way that the world was situated against her. And I fell in love with her more than Fitz at that point, because I was like, I want to be with you.
Right.
Cinna's like, I don't need to read Red Rising. You just got to cover
Yes.
your ears when I say spoiler alert.
Sorry,
Sorry.
Senna. To be fair, though, there's a lot that goes on in that series, and I'm just speaking from the first 2 books.
Yeah.
It is just a roller coaster and jam-packed, so we maybe talked, like, the out of a percentage like that
Well, and,
much.
and again, you're talking about two different sides of the spectrum. What I
Mhm.
like about Hob is that I'm invested in the characters, but it's a really slow burn,
It
which
is.
is usually kind of a turnoff, unless it's done perfectly,
Yeah.
right? What's great about Red Rising is that the pace is nonstop, jam, bam, bam,
Yeah.
and you're always interested in what's going to happen next. So there's a roller coaster feel that goes along with Red Rising that's really appealing. And you can cover a lot of mistakes with that, honestly, because you're constantly being propelled, and you can still have the emotional investment in the character, but just in
Mhm.
case you don't, we're moving on to the next thing. And it's like two entirely different writing styles. And with that, you wind up with two of the pillars of the community out of those entirely different writing
Yeah.
styles.
That's very true. And so I'm curious then,
Sorry,
what
I
are the
just thought
next.
Darius Ketrican is the bestest
Oh,
pitch
yes.
ever.
So I'm curious then, if you've got these 2 pillars that you've really loved, the books that you've loved for their different reasons, what have you, what book would you want to pick up next then? And this could be a classic, it could be one of the, like, other pillars, it could be any book. But just based on what you said with these 2 authors being pillars in their own rights and their own styles, if based on your mood right now, what would you want to grab next to read?
I keep wanting to go to Sanderson
Hmm.
and Way of Kings And I think I may need to go with somebody because
Okay.
one, shoot me in the face, but I don't like Mistborn.
No, that's fair.
I and I think it may be a Sanderson problem for me because I was just reading Way of Kings last night. I got kind of bored with what I was reading, although what I'm reading is actually kind of interesting. But the book I'm reading now has absolutely nothing to do with what I would normally read, although it's starting
Right.
to become a little Six of Crows-ish, which I just love. Um,
Okay.
but with Sanderson, I always feel like I'm being explained to about
Mm,
how things work,
yes.
and it drives me crazy.
Mm,
So, but I want to at least read Way of Kings to be able to say I think that's probably his pinnacle achievement.
okay. Okay.
So I think I need to at least be able to get through that and discover whether or not I can get into Sanderson because I want to. I
Okay.
read Mistborn twice,
So
saying, "Okay, I screwed up. I didn't read it the right way."
no, not at all. So I've heard that quite often actually where people love the Stormlight Archive, but they didn't care for Mistborn at all.
Okay.
I have heard that. I enjoyed it because for me, like I skipped
Which it
the Mistborn. So the Mistborn trilogy,
Mistborn.
I did enjoy it. I more enjoyed it again when the big reveal comes at the end. That's where it sold me and it made everything that came before it worthwhile.
Okay.
That being said, Way of Kings was far better in my opinion if you love that slow burn and character investment. So,
Okay, so I do have characters
yes,
that are
you
not just archetypes. That was my other problem with Mistborn. It's like
so
they were just Lego pieces.
I feel like you're gonna find some archetypes, but I feel like it's a setup to subvert them, if
Great,
that makes sense.
great,
I could be
and I don't
completely
mind
wrong though.
archetypes. Yeah, I don't mind archetypes if they're drawn well, if they're colorful, if they draw me in emotionally.
Right.
I just the street rat and the mentor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't because that should work for me. That should
Mhm.
those two together should work. And I just felt like, oh, I'm just going to explain how magic works again.
Right.
It
Yeah.
wasn't
So
perfect.
there is going to be some of that, but there's a lot more kept hidden from you in the Way of Kings. So you have to read like 6 books to five. I don't know how many. Basically, if you want answers, the more he gives you answers, the more questions it raises
Great.
in
Okay.
terms of the world building. And then with the characters, I think you would enjoy them. But I'm also saying I think because I've only read the first book. So I also need to keep reading to find out what happens to them because
Right.
they do have some tropish aspects to their characteristics. However, within the first book, there was some subversion to that. So,
Perfect.
yeah.
That'll help. As long as it's just not somebody explaining magic for 300 pages, I'll be okay.
No, no, there's trauma. There's definitely trauma. Going back to that conversation.
Well, and I think there's something weird about me that wants magic to be magic.
Mm,
And the more it gets explained, the more it feels like sci-fi, right? You're going to
yeah.
tell me how the jump drive works
Mhm.
using some made up gibberty gobble of science, and you're going to throw in the word photon and quantum and pretend like you just made sense. I'm not interested in playing that game, and really it comes in the same way with magic, where it's just
Mm,
like, no, I want it to be magic. When people talk about magic systems, I don't know what they're talking about, right? I
right.
think Sanderson and Zach Argyle. That's
Yeah.
the only ones I can think of.
I think Sanderson is known for his high fantasy style magic systems. Um, I don't mind them. I think they can when they're done right with the story, it can work really well. But I think the biggest pet peeve people had with Mistborn was tosses a coin, jumps, tosses a coin, jumps.
Right?
And I completely get that pet peeve.
I push, then I pull, then I push, then okay, I got it. Thanks.
There's gotta be another way to describe it. So it in that case, I would say it's more a storytelling issue rather than the magic system. But yeah, Sanderson is not for everyone, is what I will
Okay.
say. So, no shame, and, Melissa, yeah, she says never, read Sanderson. I'm in the he's too popular camp. Completely understandable.
And I'm trying to write down Nico's suggestion of Lord of a Shattered Land by Howard Andrew James. I'm having trouble finding it on Goodreads.
Oh, I'll send you a link. I know which one he's talking about, if you can't find it. I haven't
There we
read that
go.
one, but Nico and Andrew, Wizardly Reads has
Oh,
highly recommended
this is not
those.
very famous at all.
No, it's an indie.
Okay, cool.
And yes, Nico, I do watch your reviews.
There we go.
I'll put it on the screen for anyone who's watching.
Do you know why Lord of the Shattered Lands would work? Does it work for you?
I haven't read it.
Okay. What have
I
you
haven't.
read recently, like in the last before your vacation, right?
Before
Let's
my
say the three
vacation.
months before your vacation. What was the thing that grabbed you most?
Oh, dear God, can my memory go back that far?
Right?
Um,
I'm convinced the ones you really love though stick.
mm, I think they do. I think at a certain point, though, my sleep deprivation gets the best of me.
Yeah,
Um, and
you are
my
juggling a lot.
well, mainly it's slowly getting better, and that just has to do with stages of childhood development.
Yeah.
Um, but I did read Gog Magog by Jeff Noon and Steve something. It's co-authored.
How do you spell that?
Gog Magog, Gogmagog.
There we go. Patricia Mello.
Steve something, and Jeff Noon. Jeff Noon would be the name that comes up. I had to think about that, sorry.
Oh, this one's in Spanish. Okay, here we go. Gog Magog, one word.
Gog Magog. So the reason this one stood out to me was we follow an old character. This isn't like the farm boy going out on an adventure to save the world. This is an old lady who was a sailor. She's very rough, very disgusting. Hygiene is not a thing for her. And she's just this old sour woman who's like, "Oh, fine, the gods want me to go, fine." And she gets back on her old ship and she sails out and things are going wonky in the world. And there's some things that didn't quite work for me in it, but overall I was fully invested in the main character because life doesn't go to like it's just old. She should be retired. And then the more you read, the more you find out about her. And that was fascinating. And then the world itself and how that worked with this character, also fascinating, and other characters. So for me, I really enjoyed that one. I think it was the most memorable because where are you gonna get a like old lady saves the freaking world
Right.
story if she does that? Because there's still another book coming out. We don't know. But so where are you gonna find that? And then a bit of nautical as well, right? Because she's an old sailor.
The nautical thing, like you were talking about live ship,
Hmm.
I don't know what it is about nautical. Okay. So who was it? One of the reviewers didn't like Rooker Flynn because it didn't have kind of a journey feel to it, and I completely get that. And I think that's part of the reason that I like nautical so much is because it makes it so easy to be somewhere else. Like you can
Mm.
reset the scene so quickly by changing the environment, and the whole freedom aspect of ships to me is just fantastic. And I get what you're saying with Gog
Mm.
Magog, where it's like that there's something like my basis, my foundation, my Lord of the Rings, there's no nautical in that at all. We're just walking for
No.
3,000 miles. But I think Live Ship was the first one where I ever read where it was like that was the center, right? The
Right.
world is the sea. And coming from here to there, is where the action happens. And I don't know. The more I think about it, the more I think I'm really digging on nautical stories.
I find them fascinating. Um, Nomads of the Sea, Kobe Zucker, really well done. It gives you interesting settings too,
Yeah.
right? Because in that one, it's a military fantasy. Have you ever seen a war take place on sea? And I'm not talking like massive ships shooting cannons. I'm talking people jumping from ship to ship and like duking it out. And then there's RJ Barker's Trader. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name. Ah, find it. If someone remembers which one I'm talking about, it's
Here,
up
I'll,
there.
I'll, I'll yap while you're
Yeah,
thinking.
go for it.
I'm reacting to Nico's saying he still really needs to read Nomads. I can forgive myself for not reading Nomads yet. I don't think I can forgive Nico for not reading Nomad. I mean, Nomads have been shoved down his face so many times. I mean, you almost have to read it at this point.
One day, I
You
hope
read it,
Nico
didn't
will get
you?
to it. I did. I was one of the first readers.
You
I was the
loved it.
first. I was like, people read this, and
Yeah.
yeah, I. It took Tori 2 years before and I bought her a copy, and she finally read it, and she's like, "Yeah, this is amazing." So, and yes, thank you, Nico. It is the Bone Ships trilogy.
Oh, okay.
That one I think you would really like too.
Oh my gosh, Nomads is sitting at 23 ratings. Oh
It's
no.
criminal. It's a hidden gem. People read it if you love military fantasy with excellent world building, just please read it. And please go watch Tori Talk's review on it because she does a much better job than I do.
Yeah, okay, that was the other one I read during the Derry and Nico talking about it, Dungeon Crawler Carl.
Yes, yes.
And I mean, I think it was Belltube that made me go, okay, whatever,
Okay.
I'll check it. Because lit RPG's
Different. And there's
hard.
different categories. There's different
Yeah.
styles of it. Yeah.
And what I liked about I mean, the thing that saves Dungeon Crawler Carl is it is hilarious, right? It is funny throughout. Absolutely. Yeah. And Derry, listen to it, right? I mean, that audiobook is the best thing I've ever heard in my life, right? That's a
Okay.
play.
Right.
And the fact that it's hilarious makes it really work. And then the thing that makes it the kind of thing that keeps getting recommended is that amid all that humor, there's that pathos. Just every once in a while, he'll hit you with it. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, this is horrible. Okay, back to the funny now. It's like, what?
Excuse me? Whiplash.
Right? And that's a really cool element. And
Mm,
until the lit RPG parts of it just get thrown off to the side. They're just like, whatever. You got some more
right.
equipment, bibbly bobbly boo.
Yeah.
But you're there for the jokes and you stay for the pathos.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I can get I see that Dungeon Crawler Carl is one of those books where I'm like, "I'll get to it. I'll get to it. I'll save it for, like, a rainy day when my grimdark is just eating me alive." And and then it got picked up trad, and then I was like, "Well, now I have to wait a year," because they take it off the shelves, right? When they go from indie to trad, they take it off the shelves until
Yep,
however long it takes to publish a trad. So I saw it up on the shelves, recently, so it's finally re-released in its
re-released,
latest cover.
reimagined, recovered, rejacketed.
Yeah. So I'll have
Actually,
to dig into
don't
that.
don't even think about it. Just read the audiobook.
Yeah. Okay.
The
I'll do that.
audiobook is it, right?
Okay.
I mean, I'm not kidding. It will be the best audiobook I ever hear in my life because the production values are so high, right?
Right.
They do voice alteration, they do chimes, they do music, they do mods. It's
Wow.
incredible what they managed to pull off. And I think all with one narrator too.
Okay. Wow. That's intense. Derry says too, I'm not a gamer at all, so lit RPG shouldn't work for me, but holy crap, these are good.
I'm totally in your
Yeah.
boat, Derry.
Yeah.
100%.
And Nico's in Grimdark this month. You're getting ready for the spooky season.
I have a question, honestly. Why would you
Mhm.
ever read the second Thomas Covenant book? Like, did you not learn your lesson with the first Covenant book?
I don't I don't know what this book is, but oh no.
I mean, that
Uh,
book is a piece of crap. I hate that book. I don't think I've ever hated a book more than I've hated that book.
okay.
Oh,
Interesting.
Daniel's read all 10 of them. Why? Oh, have you read Thomas Covenant, the
I
Unbeliever?
have no idea what you're talking about
Oh
now.
my God.
So don't Google it is what you're saying.
Oh. If you want a main character who you want nothing to do with, Thomas Covenant is for you.
Okay, you have to I'm sorry, but you need to categorize this character for me because I have met some characters where they're like absolutely hateable, deplorable, but you like them anyway, but characters who you're just like you can't stand because of a variety of reasons. So what category does this guy fall
For
in?
me, it would be the raping would probably be
Okay,
the main
yeah.
thing to kind of say, no, I'm not interested.
Gotcha. It's a little rapey. Got
A
it.
little rapey, a little rapey. Turns out I don't want to spend my time with that.
Yeah, I was thinking you're gonna be like, "Oh, he's just a complete jerk.
It's
He's
a little
just
rapey for me.
unredeemable." Gotcha.
Like
He's
that should be a sentence in trial.
he's Nico says he's slightly less unlikable in the
Oh,
sequel series.
oh my God. Ouch. That actually hurt
Okay.
my chest.
Thank you, Nico. Okay, good to know.
Oh
Should
my God.
can
Who's the most deplorable character you've
oh,
ever read?
me?
Yeah. No, the
Oh
invisible
my
people.
god.
Like, what character do you hate the most? I love to
Okay.
hate or hate.
See, this is one of those things where why I asked for the categories because there are terrible characters like Mareth from the Empire Dust series. He's a terrible person for
Okay.
many different reasons. Are you okay?
Oh, this seriously hurt my chest from laughing so hard.
Oh, we're gonna have to tone it down a notch. We're gonna go back to this grim stuff. Uh, but yeah, so Mareth from the Empire of Dust series, he's terrible. You know, does terrible things, has zero conscience. Um, he kind of holds the line somewhere, but it his line is still deplorable. And then I think Nico might have mentioned the name Ithra. I can't remember the other character's name because I hated him. I hated him. I wiped his name from my memory.
Yeah.
Um, so this character is just has zero self agency. He's just like, "Oh, woe is me, I'm a noble, and I'm plotting a coup, and oh no, the world is after me, and everyone hates me, and oh no, my lover is gone, and my wife hates me, and it's just like, okay, well, maybe being st- stop, stop all of this, and then they keep they
All
keep
of this
doing it.
with you gotta stop.
Yes. So, yeah, I think it really depends on the type of hate because Mareth, fascinating for his entire character arc, terrible person that people should hate. And then you have this dude who I've wiped his name from my memory because I could not every time he came on the page, I'm like, "You are the problem. You are 100% the problem." And, I'll reach out to you, Nico, or I'll watch the video because I'm curious, but it's
He doesn't even know who it is.
yeah,
I like the fact that you hated somebody so much that you completely erased them from existence.
I remember their entire story arc. I refuse to retain their name. I remember and then the way that whole situation ended with the trilogy and this character's arc, hated him even more. Hated him even more. I didn't think it was possible. I absolutely despise this character, and it's not because he makes some bad choices. But the way he handles the choices makes him like one of those people that I might meet on the streets or I might know in my life,
Oh.
and it makes it all the worse. because they might not be like a nobleman or, they might not be all hoity-toity, but they're gonna complain about their life 24/7, make all the bad choices, get the comeuppance of those choices, or walk scot-free. And then they're like, "Oh, well, I have all these things to do, and there's all these things happen to me, woe is me." And I probably sound horrible, but
You're not up for self-pity.
no, not at all. You get what you get. You made your choices. You don't get to go back and forth between your choices, between wanting a coup and then not wanting a coup, and then wanting a coup and then not wanting a coup, and whatever other choices you are making, because he
So you
makes
don't like
well,
Hamlet.
no.
Who likes Hamlet?
Dairy, thank you. So yeah, I find that the characters that are hateable for me are the ones that do it to themselves and then have the audacity to go to the other characters and say, "You should respect me more. I deserve to be treated better, and you should just do it because I'm me." You know? My life should be better because I am me. And yeah,
Jezel,
ah,
right?
that I just get out. Yeah, yeah, Dairy, new achievement unlocked. Rant.
Yeah. Yeah,
So yeah.
Jezel in the Abercrombie books was exactly
Oh,
that for
yeah.
me. And the fact that I warmed up to him
Yeah.
was one of the best characters. Like you got Logan on one side and you
Mhm.
got Glockta on the other, and by the middle of book 2, I'm going for this guy? Are you kidding me?
And then book 3 kinda turns around on you again?
Yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, all of this is pointless. Have a nice night.
What, you cared about this?
Yeah, I feel
Shame
like
on
at the
you.
end of the third book, like it was Abercrombie in an aircraft carrier and just kind of jumped off with a parachute, going "See ya!" Like that was the end of the book.
It was. But I loved it. I
Yeah,
loved it.
absolutely.
Yeah. So
You know
Daniel's
somebody's done a good job with the storytelling if they can do that to you at the end of the story and like, yeah, man.
yeah, it's like the dream sequences in movies or books where they're like, all these epic things happen, crazy battle, people die. Oh, sorry, that was a dream. None of that actually happened. All of those things that had you emotionally in turmoil, do not exist. Your characters are fine, right? It's so cheap. Don't do that to me. Not at all. Not at all. Daniel here says it would be interesting to analyze what makes us like certain deplorable characters while we cannot stand other characters who are arguably much less evil.
Well,
Absolutely. I think it was just in that comparison I had, it was just Marith was he's God, how do I even describe it? He was not so I don't even want to say he wasn't as whiny. It's just that he took charge. He still made choices. He he owned it. He was a terrible person and he knew it. And he rode that, right? This other guy was like, "Oh, council meeting." Yeah.
I think the way to make you hate a character is to make them wishy-washy and woe is me all my life. I think
Yeah.
that's it. That's how you get you to hate a character.
Stand up, do something about it.
Yeah, and going back to Abercrombie again, none of these characters have a moral compass at all. And I
No.
think the difference is charming, right?
Yeah.
Glockta is horrible. Logan is horrible, but the charm that's built into them is the reason why you love them as characters. It's not the things that they do, right?
Mhm.
It's the attitude about them and probably the charm with which they approach things. Like the entire time I was reading Glockta, it was Peter Dinklage delivering the lines. I mean, as far as I was concerned, Glockta just gave me more of Tyrion Lannister after they stopped writing jokes for him in season 4,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
right? It was
Yeah.
just like, that whole kind of same haughty, wry, more intelligent than you kind of aspect to him.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, go ahead and torture some people. That's fine. I'll keep watching you.
It's just another day at the office.
Just another day at the It's fine. It's fine. We got to take care of things for the Inquisition. We get the Iceman over here. We'll be all set.
But you get that perspective of it, but then he also does the moments of, like, "Do you wanna mess around? Do you wanna find out? Because 'Cause I've played this game, and I'm
Right.
good at this game."
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and that's what you like about him is that he's steel hard, smarter than everybody in the room, and willing to do whatever it takes to win.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah,
It's the
and
exact opposite of the kind of person you hate. Lockton never
expensive.
did this.
No. No, I mean, he had his moments of complaints, but that was due to circumstance, and, I mean, he lived it every day. I get it. I get a cramp in my leg, I get it. I don't wanna climb stairs either.
Right.
Yeah, we've got some hate in the chat. Look at that.
See, yeah, Kyle from Live Ships, Cinna's saying Logan's not bad. I don't know what to tell you.
Yep.
Kyle from Live Ships. What I love, one of the things that I loved about Spaniard and Joe Ledger. Okay. Hey, let's talk about hateable. Okay. I think I figured out one.
Okay.
In Live Ships, okay, there's a character named Malta. And do you
Okay.
remember Malta?
In live
Malta?
ships?
In Live Ships, yeah.
I haven't read it.
Okay.
No, but
So
you
there,
can go for the chat. Go for it.
so I'll just explain. She's the girl who thinks everything should be handed to her. She's the ultimate spoiled child,
Gotcha.
right? And nothing is good enough for her, and everyone else is wrong, and everything is, and she just wants to have the better life, where her life is already fantastic, and she doesn't recognize it or believe it.
I already hate her.
Yeah, she's the absolute worst, and that's the thing that makes Hob great with Live Ship, among many other things, is not to spoil anything, but I hated Malta. Hated Malta. I wanted her to die so that I could get her out of the way and make her stop being part of the story and screwing up other people's lives. And Hob gets you to feel for her. She
Okay.
very intentionally makes me hate her during the first part of
Mm,
the story, and then there's a turn.
right.
And it's this slow bend, and I'm not going to wreck anything, but I
Mm,
was so busy wanting her to die, and for the author to take this little sneaky little girl and turn her into something that was worth caring about was jaw dropping. It was pure artistry. That alone puts Hob in the top tier category for me. The
right.
fact that she not even the fact that she was that she could pull it off, that she could pull it off so well, and that she thought of doing it at all. She's like, I'm going to give you somebody to hate, and I'm going to change the way you feel about them. Writer challenge accepted. Let's go.
Right. That sounds like a goal she unlocked in
Oh
terms
yeah,
of skill.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I've never seen anybody do it that well ever, ever. Most people don't even
Hmm.
try because it's a stupid stunt. Right. You're so busy trying to get people invested in characters that you don't want to uninvest somebody so that you can reinvest. It's like, what are you doing?
But that's a
And
very specific
and it's that
reader.
surprise. It goes back to that surprise thing. It's like
Yeah.
this is not what I was expecting. And that's where you get hit with the great stuff.
Yeah. And that takes a special kind of readership as well, though, because
Yeah,
there are
you're
some
you're,
people
you're
who
putting
would
a
just
lot
be
of faith.
out, right? But it's kind of like when you're building a channel, you're writing a book, you're building your audience. You're hand picking the type of readers you want to stick around in the long run.
Right. Who are
And
the
it
right
sounds like that's what she's done.
Yeah, oh yeah.
She's just curated her readership to a very specific, I guess, it takes a very specific reader to get through that whole arc
Yeah.
without completely hating what the author did.
Well, and what's great, oh my gosh, I'm just gonna go off on live ship, although I'm gonna have a big conversation with Derry about this later, so I don't want to use up all my juice, but
That's
she's
alright.
got
We
so many different characters in live ship that you're invested in that while you're busy hating or not liking Sansa, busy or not hating or not liking somebody, she's able to buoy you with all these other storylines that you're interested in while we let this one fester until we can get her to the point that you want her to be in, where she
Right.
becomes interesting. It's like, well done.
Yeah. Okay. Hmm.
I
All
will
right.
slap this fictional child if it's the last thing I do. I will find Malta from book one and slap her,
Yep.
set her on fire.
Peak hateable character that completely won you over.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's the great thing about hateable characters is that sometimes,
Mm.
a lot of times, the villain is a big part of the reason to keep going. Right?
Yeah,
A great villain makes the good characters better.
they do. Yeah.
And sometimes it's the great villains that you just absolutely fall in love with or that help you
Yeah.
fall in love with a story.
I think
Yeah.
it makes them more human as well.
Yeah.
It just right, we're not all good and evil. We're not black and white. We're, everything in between. It's an entire spectrum and it can change from what. Do you know what? Today someone messed up my donut order. I'm destroying all the Tim Hortons. That's my villain arc. It just takes, people say villain origin story. Yeah, because something really bad has to happen to make a decent person do terrible things. And I wholly appreciate when an author can make characters, regardless of good or bad, doesn't matter to me, make them human. I
Yeah.
don't care if they're a strong female character. I don't care if they're a quirky character. Make them human. Can I find that person somewhere out in the world? Yes, fantastic. Job done.
Right.
Can I grow to love them or hate them? Yeah.
They destroyed Dunkin' Donuts. It's her canon event. I always get hung up on strong female character because I hear, oh, there are no strong female characters. It's like, are you kidding me? First of all, they're riddled throughout literature, television, and film. And if you can't find any, I'm sorry. And if you don't
Yes.
have any in your own life, you're in real trouble. So if you're not recognizing those people, what the hell? So I'm with
Yeah.
you. Strong female character on her own isn't all that interesting. Strong female
No.
character with an interesting problem or an interesting take or something about her that you're not expecting. Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
But if all you're doing is strong female character, well,
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of books can get mismarketed easily because of that. I've seen it happen with one book that I tried, and they marketed it as like the strong female. They called her the bitch queen. It was actually called the bitch queen series because this character was meant to be such a ferocious character. Didn't get along with anyone, but ran her kingdom the way she wanted it to. And you're like, okay, that sounds pretty cool and interesting. Sounds like that could be a character worth reading. And it was just a soap opera
yeah.
dropped into a fantasy, and that's completely fine. There's absolutely a market for that. But don't tell me I'm going in with war and a character who is, the typical classic male role that's now a female, kind of just flipped it over, and I get a lovesick puppy. You know? So
Yeah, that was another thing about Live Ship is that I didn't realize I was reading a story that was mainly about, I don't know, maybe 7, 8 strong female characters until I was like deep into book 3. And it
yeah,
was because I read a review, right? It never hit me that, oh, there are a lot of female characters in this book, or there are a lot of strong female characters. It's just that they're interesting people. So
yeah,
it's, yeah, I feel like if that's all you're bringing to the table, it's like, okay, find another table.
just right people, just right people, and the strength will
What the
show.
hell? It's like, Robin Hobb, how do you write men so well? Nobody ever asks that question.
It's true though. I'd love I think it just happens in every no matter what field you're in, whether it's publishing, whether you're in entertainment, whether you're working in an office, there's always going to be standard questions for one side and not the other.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And it's just the way the world is, unfortunately. And at the end of the day, I think so long as you are aware of that, and as in terms of books, you can avoid those pitfalls
Yeah, no kidding.
and you can avoid those things just because if someone's delving into fantasy right now for the first time ever, right? They're not gonna know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Strong female characters in this whole thing, they have no context to it. And it's because there are so many of us that have read the busty barmaid that's come in, and that's all they were at the point at the time. Um,
I
and
gotta raise my hand though.
yeah,
Have you have you read The Busty Barmaid?
I
I mean,
have
does that character ever show up as like a lead in one of your books?
no, but they're in every freaking pub.
Oh,
And
well,
they
sure, okay.
right, and when you do get some of the female ones, I have read some where it talked about their physique a lot more than the males,
Right,
a
I've
lot
seen that
longer.
complaint. Yep.
So it's not necessarily that the female lead is busty, but her physique is talked about way more than the male.
Anything to do with her character.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
yeah.
just a swing and a
So,
miss. I don't even
well,
know if it's really a swing. It's just like it's just like a slide down a hill.
but it's also a product of the time,
Hmm?
right? If we're looking at older fantasy, that was the thing back then, and that's totally fine. Things change, things grow,
Oh,
right?
you're talking about
We
like the Conan Barbarian, the helpless femme that needs to be saved,
kind
and
of.
then
Well, there's
ravaged.
even some that are the strong female, and then they still are portrayed that way,
Right.
right?
The chainmail
So
armor. Okay.
yeah, so it just depends, but there's
Chainmail.
there's different categories of it because there are still books that do it today, but then there's also the ones that are just they're the classics. They kind of set the standard if you know if you're looking at it that way. So yeah, I don't think it's something we'll ever get away from entirely. I think it'll always be a little bit there, but yeah,
Yeah, Gloria always my wife Gloria always talks about uh yes, men and women are different and that's a good thing. It's like, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, if we
absolutely.
were the same it would be really freaking boring.
Yeah, and there is that double standard too, where, like, I've seen women complain, "Well, women don't look like that. Women aren't shaped like that. That's a hard standard to live up to." I'm like, someone said it in the comments here, "Conan. Have you looked at Conan?
Right.
How many men are looking at him going like, 'I'm supposed to live up to
I'm supposed to look like that? No,
that?'"
none of us are thinking about that because no man bothers thinking. It's really a
And on that note, I think we should wrap up.
write it down.
But it's true though, men have a different process and how they think. Their jokes are different, you know? But yeah, yeah,
How
that's
dare they portray Conan that way? Is that the standard that I'm supposed to be able to be?
where's the makeup? Where's the contouring on those abs?
Right. Every guy's
But
just looking at Conan going, yeah, that's me.
yeah, but then there's, so it's double standard, but yeah, I think ladies, if you're watching, don't worry about it. Take a note from the men and, care less about physique because trust
Yeah.
me, the men aren't caring about physique.
Right.
They're caring about what's up here, and if your men are caring about physique, then, you know,
They're the wrong man.
thank you. I didn't wanna say it, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Please say it. The ones that are the wrong men need to hear it.
There you go. With that being said, Andy, thank you so much for a lovely chat. Everyone in the chat, thank you for joining us too. Fabulous to chat about your books and then delve into some crazy bookish chats off the chain.
Yeah.
Always love it.
That's where the gold is.
So for those watching now and later, go check out Andy's books, A.R. Witham. You've got Legend of Black Jack. You've got The Crimes of Rooker Flynn and a novella to go in there as well. Take your pick. There are plenty. There are links in the description. Andy, what's next? What can
Yeah,
people look forward to?
if you have gone 2 hours and 8 minutes into this video, just buy the damn book because you earned it. Write me a letter, I'll send you a freaking copy.
There you go.
Yeah, so what's next is the trial. We start with the crimes, we move on to the
Mm,
trial. And the trial of Rooker Flynn comes out next, and that's going to be in January, thanks to Rob J. Hayes and Dr. Philip Chase for giving me the advice of saying, wait, hang on, don't release it yet. wait until after the new year. We've got the election coming up. We've got Christmas coming up. Calm
Jeez.
down. And nobody wants to read ARCs like before January 5th anyway, right? Everybody's
Oh,
so blah, blah, blah. It's like,
life does not allow.
yeah, it's like give them 3 weeks into the year before you put it in position. Yeah, but ARCs go out. ARCs will go out like in like 9 or 10 days.
Brilliant.
So I'm
Wow.
thrilled about it.
So go check out Andy's website, go check out the books. You've got plenty of time before Christmas and, the winter when life gets chaotic. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and take care of yourselves.
Bye.
Bye.